Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Glad you're here. Struggling to get going tonight. Originally, it was going to be just a regular build video, and I'll build it through the video as we go through this. But you'll notice my normal welcome wasn't there. My normal welcome is welcome back to the channel, everyone. And the problem is, I normally say good evening, welcome back. The problem is this: it's not a good evening in Oklahoma. It's not a good evening around the world because 2 days ago, Oklahoma engaged in the oldest Old Testament justice. Reading from an NBC News report, Oklahoma carries out its first execution of 2026 on a man convicted of a double unaliving. I'll be paraphrasing to comply with the YouTube algorithm. Kendrick Simpson, 45 years old, was convicted in the 2006 unaliving of 19-year-old Anthony Jones and 20-year-old Glenn Palmer after a dispute in Oklahoma City nightclub. Kendrick Simpson, 45 years old, was pronounced unalive at 10:19 a.m. Central Time, following the 3-drug protocol at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAlester. Reading from the article, he admitted to the acts during a clemency hearing last month. He apologized to the victims' families and a third man who was in the vehicle when the decedents were attacked. Quote, I apologize for, paraphrasing here, unaliving your sons. I don't make any excuses. I don't blame others, and they didn't deserve what happened to them. Despite his apology, the state's 5-member pardon and parole board narrowly voted to deny clemency. Here's the thing. Even if they had voted to deny clemency, it ultimately would have gone to the governor for consideration. And Oklahoma's governor does not have the best track record when it comes to such things. The U.S. Supreme Court, on a last-minute habeas appeal, denied the appeal and had no comment, but they normally don't. It'd be weird if they did. He grew up in a New Orleans housing project and was a transplant to Oklahoma City following Hurricane Katrina in 2005. His attorneys argued he had suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder stemming from chronic trauma in his childhood years growing up in a New Orleans housing project. Quote, Kendrick is a man worthy of your mercy and compassion. The, quote, the paraphrase, unaliving penalty is supposed to be reserved for the worst offenses and offenders. Kendrick and his case represent neither. I'll agree with most of that. I'm going to disagree with the last statement. And it says some, not all, some of the victims' family members told the board they supported the penalty, the pardon and parole board, they supported the penalty. Only, well, it's probably other states too, but it seems odd to me that in this state, the same people who stand up and say the lives of unborn children matter and that life is precious from conception and that body autonomy doesn't apply to women who are pregnant can in the same breath advocate for the taking of the life of another human being. We live in the greatest the greatest system of governance ever invented. And yet we still resort at the very basic level to the simplest forms of Neanderthalic barbarism. And that's a me quote. I'm not quoting that. That's a me thing. Laura Waldy, good evening. And good all the mods except Barb are here. So good evening, mods. Glad you're all here. Figure Barb is out working a tennis tournament or volleyball tournament, something somewhere. Yeah, how can we in one breath, in the first breath, say, and not it's not whether I agree or disagree with the position, it's the hypocrisy of it. You know, how can you say in one breath that life begins at conception, and that any attempt to interfere with that process should be illegal, and then in the next breath also decide that you get to play God? The argument is doctors with the ability to, with medication, should not play God as to unborn children. Likewise, the government should not play God. It makes my heart hurt. It makes my soul ache. We are the defenders of freedom around the world. We represent the greater the United States. This idea. The United States is not a government. It is a people. It is an idea. It is a concept. It is a social construct that we all as people choose to accept and to follow by virtue of living in this space and in this time. We are the world's force for good. And yet we cannot protect our own from ourselves. And you can put any argument that you want to, put it in the chat. I'll read it. I'll get caught up in the chat in a minute. But you can put any argument that you want to. But Zach, he did this. But Zach, he did that. But it doesn't matter. Our system, our existence, this idea, this social construct is greater than the sum of its parts. It is more than the people who live here and who exist in this space and in this time. And we have to act like it. We have to hold ourselves to the highest standard. We have to stand up when faced with the contrarianism of it all, and we cannot settle for the answer yes but. And yet here we are. The Catholic Church, for its many shortcomings, and it has many, and I'm certainly not critical. I myself am human, but the Catholic Church, for its many shortcomings, has taken, and to my knowledge, has always taken the position of the absolute sanctity of the human life. So, in the first breath, they say that the unborn child should be protected from the moment of conception, and even the doctrine goes a little deeper than that, but I'll leave it there for now. And in the very next breath, also say that there is never the defensible position of the taking of one's life by government or otherwise. And so, to that end and on that note, I respect the position of the church on that issue, that the same people who stand on the steps of the courthouse when Roe versus Wade is struck down are also the people who stand outside the gates of the penitentiary and say, don't do this. They are the same people who lead the prayer vigils in support of justice. I'll be honest. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I know what the answer is not. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but I know what the answer is not. I know that it is hard for me in the same breath that I tell my children, we must love one another. We must respect each other, whether we agree or disagree with an individual's position or worldview. We have to acknowledge that they have value. Their very existence on the big spinny ball on which we all cohabitate with one another, by virtue of being here, that person adds value to our system. I see Stephen Adams' question. Welcome, Stephen. I'm glad you're here tonight. He asks a series of questions. How does a case get to death row? How does an inmate get to the point of completing his penalty? How long does it usually take for a verdict to, or for the event, I think is what you're asking, for the actual act to happen? There's an enormous amount of data on this, and I don't know, Arden Courts may be a little better qualified if she's got any experience looking at the more recent data on this. But I know the average time on death row is right around 20 years. If one receives that particular penalty, and each state adjudicates those penalties differently. This was a 2005 case, so this was 21 years. Looks like 2006 case was 20 years. Each state handles it differently. Under federal law, under federal habeas corpus law, there are if one were to receive that penalty from a jury, then as a matter of constitutional protections, certain automatic appeals occur. Now, in the case of people like Timothy McVeigh, he waived those automatic appeals, said, I do not want this heard on appeal. His position on that particular case, on the Oklahoma City terror attack in 1995, he viewed himself as a martyr for his cause. And so he wanted the event to occur. He wanted the sentence to be carried out as expeditiously as possible, because to his mind, he was a martyr for his cause. That is the exception. That is not the rule. Different states do it different ways. As far as like actually executing it, and how is this going to be a case in which that penalty is sought by prosecutors, or is it not? And then who can impose the sentence? Does the jury impose the sentence? Is the trial bifurcated? Or is it tried? Is the penalty phase, meaning, do they determine guilt, and then if the verdict comes back guilty, do they then come back later and do the penalty phase? Arden Courts makes a good point here. She says that Oklahoma and Texas have put in a fast lane, and they have, really, unfortunately. But they have. In Oklahoma, we actually have a parallel appellate court system. If you are convicted of a crime, any crime, the type of crime doesn't matter, any crime at all, from a speeding ticket to the unlawful taking of another's breath, if you choose to appeal your sentence, then you appeal it directly to the first and only court of relief. There is no intermediate appellate court on the criminal side. There is one. It is the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals. That is it. That is the only thing there is. the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals. There's nothing beyond that. There is the Oklahoma State Supreme Court does not have jurisdiction over criminal matters. Only the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals does. So we actually have a parallel appellate court system. And Oklahoma is unique in that aspect a little bit. Texas also has a parallel court system. There's also Texas Criminal Appeals, and they do the same thing. I don't know if Texas has an intermediate appellate court on criminal matters or not. I'm not completely sure. That I can't answer with any confidence. Because again, Texas, I am not licensed in Texas. Texas is very close to me geographically. It's not all that far away, but I am not licensed there, so I'm not as familiar with their court system. Martin Courts may know better than I, simply because her research is likely to be much fresher than mine. All right, let's see. It looks like Martin Courts has a little bit of data for me here. Oh, let me slide to the other monitor here. Our court says, I think it's around 25 to 30 years everywhere else, but that's slowed down with issues of finding with new sources of the 3-drug protocol. That's true. The manufacturers of the name brand drugs in the 3-drug protocol are all European companies. They're all European-based companies. And most, if not all, yes, here goes the wrong piece. Yeah, so I have a lot of issues. I certainly have the moral issue of, is it really up to us to sit in ultimate judgment of one? I, of course, argue that it's not. It is not up to us. It is. We can sit in judgment of our fellow brothers and sisters in humanity, and we should. They should be held to account for their actions. But I don't believe that those actions rise to the level, right? I don't believe that our ability to hold them to account should rise to the level of us sitting in final judgment of them. Now, part of that is my religious upbringing, my religious belief. That's part of it. I'm having trouble finding a piece here. Okay. Now, that also doesn't mean I'm right. Let's see. Idaho's on the slow side because it appears that one of the states that really slowed down because of drugs. Lawmakers actually considered bringing back up the firing squad. It's true. So I digress. So the European countries that provide most of these particular chemical sets to the chemicals used in the protocol have legitimate medical uses. They really do. But in this particular situation, they are not being used they are not being used in a legitimate medical manner. So that's essentially they use an anesthetic to render the decedent unconscious, as if they were going in for surgery. They then administer a paralytic that paralyzes the muscles. And then they administer a high saturation solution of salt. They use a high content salt solution to stop the heart. Oklahoma ran into the same thing, so Oklahoma has also implemented an alternative method using nitrogen to cause hypoxia, brain, right, through oxygen starvation. Not the right size plate, a 3x3 plate. Actually, I need 2 of those. So mean, I don't know. I struggle to understand why these two square with society, and the argument of, well, people, the majority of fill in blank here support it, is simply not true. The data we have says otherwise. It is, and this, it is important to seek justice. It really is. Okay, it is important. It is an important and necessary part of our society to seek justice. But justice must be handed out even-handedly. We know that that particular penalty is disproportionately applied to members of minority populations, members of minority communities, primarily blacks and Hispanics. We know that to be true. The other thing is this: we are not perfect. Every day of every year, prison cell doors open and wrongly convicted, incarcerated persons walk out. And let's make something very clear, I guess, to begin. That is not okay. Right? Martin Luther King says, I would rather 1,000 criminals walk free than one innocent man be incarcerated, than one innocent man go to prison. 100% agree with the sentiment, right? But I believe that societally it is the correct and proper approach. And so to that end, I agree. All right. Now, and that's, and so we need justice. Justice is important. Justice must be handed out even-handedly. I don't think that it is most of the time. In fact, I think we know the data tells us that it is often not. Right? For lack of a better term, it tells us, we know the data tells us that it often is not handed out even-handedly. Okay, so we'll sort of use that as our measuring stick. Okay, and if a person is convicted of a crime for which they which they legitimately did not commit, we have until they take their final breath on the big spinny ball to fix that. Now, we can never make it right. We can never undo what was done. We can never unhurt the hurt. Okay? We can't unring that bell. But they do have the opportunity to open the door and to walk out and spend what remaining time they have in the free world. And there's often enormous settlements and financial payouts on those cases. But the problem is this: all of that is fine, except if one were to receive a capital punishment sentence, if one were to be sentenced to end their life at the hands of their own government, and not in a rebellion, and not in a war, and not in armed conflict with another, but surrounded by guards and secured to a bed, I'm sorry, I don't quite see where that fits the greater needs of society. I just simply don't. And I know it sounds a bit rambly. I'm not actually I'm not talking off of notes. This is just what's kept me up at night. These are the things that, for good, bad, or otherwise, keep me up at night. I don't know what the answer is. We know that the penalty is not a deterrent. We know it's not a deterrent. We know that because people continue to be sentenced every day. They continue to be sentenced every year to the same ultimate outcome. If it was a deterrent, then the number of sentences handed down, or the amount of criminal wrongdoing that would qualify for that particular sentence, would basically become zero. There would still be criminal activity, but the type of criminal activity that one must engage in to secure that particular sentence would have to change, right? We should see that it would still be a crime. It would still be in the criminal code as criminal wrongdoing, but the number of persons convicted for that wrongdoing would have to drop, and the amount of that particular crime would go down inevitably. Like it mathematically, it would have to go down. We would not see a rise or even a hold flat of the same data point. We should, if anything, see a decrease. And we don't. We don't see a decrease. Let's see here. And Arden Quartz is right. She says that the current version of the 3-drug protocol used in the United States, and I didn't finish that thought earlier. The states, the countries where these pharmaceutical companies are that are producing these medications have signed the anti-capital punishment pledge. They do not have capital punishment in their countries. The worst sentence you can get is life without parole. And I haven't done this research. I'd like somebody to do it. I would like to see what their crime rate is compared to our crime rate, even though they don't have that particular penalty. Just out of, for lack of a, excuse me, better term, morbid curiosity. Like, what is the rate in their countries? Since they don't do to people what we like to do to people in that vein. Right, like what is it? What do their rates look like in Arden Quartz may know this. I don't know what all. Let's see. Arden Quartz raises a good point here when she says, look at even Bundy, which by any articulable measure, bad dude. Not somebody we want walking around the streets where our parents and grandparents and children live and play. Okay, I will spot you that one. I will give you that one. Okay, he was convicted in large part on bite mark evidence, and within the scientific community, and as a result, over time within the legal community, bite mark evidence is a lot less forensic sciencey, a lot less absolutely than it used to be, and rightfully so. I'm looking for a particular piece, and I had it earlier. Now I can't find it. Let's see. Oh yeah, and then Tennessee's getting ready to unalive a woman. Their first one in 50 years. Oklahoma has several women sitting on our row. They're not in McAllister at the state at the big prison. There's only, to my knowledge, one women's prison in Oklahoma. So they're going to have a high security or an administrative seg unit or a SHU special security housing unit, some sort of special placide dormitory for those individuals who are on the row. And when my dad was serving in politics, he actually went to McAllister and he saw the row. And he said the sound on the row, the sound that it makes when they open and close the doors, sounds exactly like you think it would sound. He said it sounds exactly like you think it would sound. This piece is a little bit finicky here. Stand by. And I think one of my biggest issues with the whole idea, even, is that of all of the things that we can do, if we put someone in a facility for a long period of time, almost every time we can open the door and let them out if we get it wrong. But there is something uniquely permanent about that particular administration of justice. Right, like just for whatever reason, there's just something uniquely particular. There's right just by the nature of the act, it becomes permanent. It really does. Like it becomes permanent. If we discover later, right? Like the glaring case here is Emmett Till. Okay, the case of Emmett Till was from some major city in the northeast, I don't know, Chicago or something, I forget exactly. Came down to visit his family over the summer who lived in the Jim Crow South. Allegedly, he hit on a white woman. And if I recall correctly, I think he went to jury trial and was found not guilty or something. I forget exactly. You would think I knew the facts better. I forget the facts a little bit. But in any event, I'll see where that goes. Okay. I need this one. S Bliss 68 looks pretty. Thank you. What are we making? I'll show you. It's a 3D puzzle. It's for my thing one. Awakened reflection. The trial for the man who took my daughter's life is less than 2 months away. I'm a nervous wreck. Yeah, I can't imagine. I'm not going to attempt to even comment on it because I can't even fathom the loss. Like I literally you hear me tripping over words. I'm not sure my brain even functions in a way that would understand that. And I'm terribly sorry. One of the things that I have not done, and I don't know that I could do, the little bit of criminal defense law that I have done does not involve defending people who have been accused of really, really violent stuff. And I don't know that I could do it. I have a good friend from law school. They're a public defender in capital cases. No, I guess they get abolished the death penalty in Washington, so it'll be a capital case. She's a public defender for really violent crimes, and that is the only thing she knows how to do, and not in a bad way, not remotely in a bad way. Like that is the one thing she was put on the big spinny ball to do, was to defend those people, and she's fantastic at it. I couldn't do it. I have no desire to do it, and I respect the fact that she does it more than I can ever attempt to articulate. I respect so much that she does that, because those people that she's representing have a constitutional right to the very best representation. She became so disheartened with the use of the penalty in Oklahoma that she moved. She moved like across the country, went from Oklahoma to Washington State. And I don't blame her. Like if that's your calling, if that's the thing that you were put here to do. And every case that hits your desk, like the best possible outcome isn't that the person has an opportunity to like coexist with us in society, even from behind the fence. Like in those cases, if you're defending those capital cases, that is the absolute best possible outcome for you as a lawyer. The best possible outcome is that your person gets to stay alive. I'm sorry, we should not be using the fact that your client gets to remain living as a scorecard. Sharon from Vancouver. Thank you, S. Bliss. Says, look, I almost need tweezers to help place time. Yeah, so some of the one-by-one stuff's really, really tough. Awaken says, thank you. It's been hard the entire last 3 years. I believe that. Nothing brings her back, justice or not, but it's even harder, the whole process, lack of justice and incompetence of the system in Burla. I'm not sure where Burla is. BRLA. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. BRLA. Yeah, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I got you. Yeah. She says, I spoke to the man for an hour on the phone when it first happened. I prayed for him and thought I forgave him. Now that I'll be face to face with him in the same room, though. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I'm not going to attempt to understand what you're going through because I don't. Right? I remember after I lost my mom, after my mom died, so many people among us, oh my gosh, I know what you're going through. I lost my grandmother. Oh, I lost my grandfather. Oh, I lost my aunt. And that's not to downplay their relationship with their loved one. And maybe they had a similar, especially if they were raised by their grandparent or their aunt. Maybe they had a similar relationship with that family member that I had with my mom, but it wasn't my mom and it wasn't me. Right. And we have, for whatever reason, when the people around us are grieving, we have this, as humans, I think, this insatiable desire to talk to them. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh, I know what you're going through. And you don't know, but you don't know what else to say. But we have, I think, collectively this uncontrollable desire to say something. It's like we're living in a pregnant pause. If that makes sense. Right. So when I have friends or people in my life, people that are part of my sphere of influence who experience loss or grief or trauma, and I if when I feel like I can reach out, that I should reach out, I just simply say, I'm so very sorry for your loss. I don't know what you're going through, and I don't know that you'll ever be better, but I know it's miserable. Because I do know that to be true. I do know that it's miserable, but I don't know what it's like for them. You follow? I don't know what their miserable's like. I know what my miserable was like, but I don't know what their miserable is like. But what I do know is I know it's miserable. Not trying to define that, not trying to put rules around that. I just know it's miserable. I know it sucks. I know it's hard. And I also know that in those moments, there's nothing that I can do or say that will help them grieve or be aggrieved any better. But I remember that in my loss. When my mom died, I remember, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Y- whatever. I'm like, okay, I appreciate that you're sorry. I really do, and I appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate the words. But with all due respect, you weren't her. With all due respect, your relationship with fill in the blank is not the same. So when people around me that I know are grieving and hurting, I make sure that I don't say the words that I found hurtful. And it's not an attack on those individuals. They desperately wanted to help. They desperately wanted to find a way to make the pain stop. Like they were very well intentioned in their comments. It was coming from the right place. It really was. Oh, I've got pieces flipped. Don't know. Nope, 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 nope. I'm okay. Not sure how that's going to stay there, but I guess we're going to find out. Sweet. been lucky both of my parents are still alive, but I would never presume to know exactly what anyone feels. I can empathize with them only. Exactly. It is better that than to hear nothing but silence for fear of not knowing what to say. Loss is loss, but thank God I loved enough to feel their absence. Trying to live a life that we'll be proud of to honor them best I can. For sure. Yeah, for sure. You know, it's even as adults when, when my 7-year-old gets upset, gets scared, we talk about in my house, I refer to it as the big scary world. Hang on a second, count. We talk about the big scary world. And as adults, inevitably and understandably and rightfully so, it becomes our responsibility to provide guidance to help people navigate, especially our children and those placed in our care. It is incumbent upon us to shield and protect them from the big scary world and tell them everything's going to be fine. But also, and I find, to be honest, I find this what I'm about to say interesting. I think we also have to accept that sometimes as adults, the big scary world is still at times scary and big to us. Right? And I don't know when it became so taboo for that to be a thing. I don't know when that became so not okay societally to accept that even as adults it's okay for the big scary world to be big and scary. It's important for those who turn to us, who rely upon us, who use us for guidance and counsel, and who are entrusted to us for care and upbringing. I think it is important that they also know that even as a grown up, even as an adult, even as the person in their eyes who knows all the things that there is that there are to know, right? I refer to those people as the doer of things and the knowers of knowledge. That it is okay for the big scary world to still be big and scary. Like that's okay. I don't know why or when it stopped being okay though. But I wish we could go back to an era where it was okay. In fact, last night so let me take a step back and set the scene for you. Christmas of 2024, Christmas Eve of 2024, my community lost a young dad and his daughter, one of his daughters, one of his children, to a car wreck. The rest of the family was in the vehicle, but they, fortunately, all survived. But 2 of the 7, was it, of the 6, however many, unfortunately, did not survive the accident. Well, one of the local facilities here was named in honor of that family, rightfully so. And that celebration was last night. And we went to that celebration. We had our children with us. And thing one asked, well, first off, my wife and I were talking about how the mom, the surviving spouse, left my community down the road about an hour and a half to the community where she was from, where her parents live, where the biggest part of her support system was. And she is dearly missed here. And we were sort of talking about it. And I sort of hinted about how there really wasn't a choice for this individual. She had to go for her mental health. She needed to go. She didn't have a choice. She had to go back to the core where her mom and dad and family are. She didn't have a choice. And talking about and the mental health aspect of it, and I was sort of speaking in code. You know how parents do when you know your kids are listening. They act like they're asleep, but you know they're listening in the back seat. And my wife Megan looks at me. She finally says, "Yeah, she really she had to go for her mental health." And I said, "Well, I was kind of talking in code because there's young ears in the back seat." And Megan said something to me that was profound, and I don't know why I didn't think of it before. But she said something to me that was extraordinarily profound. And most of what she says to me is, I mean, between the two of us, she's the smartest one. She said, it's okay to talk about mental health in front of children. And implicit in that statement was also, not only is it okay, it is important to talk about mental health in front of children. That children need to know that it is okay to not be okay. It is important for children to know it is okay to not be okay. It's what we do when we're not okay that matters. Like that's always the question, right? It's not like it is a perfectly acceptable thing to not be okay. It's what do we do when we're not okay? Let's look here. Awaken says, grief is hard, uncomfortable. I think the best any of us can do for others is just to give space without assumption is true. Atkins in Texas, is this voiceover later? I'm not sure I follow. No, it's all very real time. Gotta go lectures to record. All right. Thanks, Art. Thanks for hanging out with us. Be safe. We'll see you soon. Yeah, I think it's I for whatever reason, and I don't know, I'm sure there's people smarter than me and psychologists and whatnot researching this, but at some point, and maybe for the greater part of society, modern society, mental health has sort of been a taboo subject, and I don't understand. The brain is an organ, just like the liver or the kidney or the kidneys or the spleen. It's an organ. We don't question people when they need a kidney transplant. Right? Like we don't question that. We don't question the orthopedic surgeon when he goes in to do a knee replacement. Okay. We don't question the eye doctor when they say your vision is poor, you need glasses to see. If we don't ask that question, I guess I just don't understand why we treat the brain and diseases and disorders of the brain so much differently. I wonder sometimes, if perhaps, and not all the time, but I wonder if sometimes perhaps the issue is that a lot of these conditions and these diseases and these disorders aren't visible. We cannot see them. People look fine. Well, you don't look like you have anxiety. You don't look like you have depression. You don't look like you have post traumatic stress. To which I reply, what does one look like that has that? What particular image are you looking for when someone reports with those complaints? Right, to beat that dead horse just a little bit longer. When we take our car to the mechanic and we say, mechanic, my car's not running right. And the mechanic says, okay, well, what do you mean? And you do your best to articulate that to the mechanic. Hold on. And the mechanic says, well, I'm not sure. Let me work on it. The mechanic on your car doesn't just give up and go, well, you know what? I don't know what's wrong. Good luck. Here's your car back. They try different things. They test different things. Okay, well, is this it? Did this help solve the problem? Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Like they'll diagnose it. They'll spend a ton of time and sometimes a ton of your money diagnosing it. Right? Why is it that when people have complaints of mental health, it's, oh well, gee, it's just, isn't that just kind of being bummed out? Oh, you're not. Oh, you can't be depressed. You have everything. Since when is that a measuring stick? We playing competitive poker here? Yeah, when I became an adult, when I became a grown up, I mean, even to this day, I still talk to my dad nearly every day. Dad, I'm a pretty bright guy, but explain this to me. Hey, am I missing something in this? Hey, did you read this thing? What's going to be the impact of that? Right? There's a lot of wisdom there that I can rely on. You know, the other day, for those of you who followed the story, when Megan was in the hospital, it was approaching midnight. They were still running a bunch of tests on her. Well, it was a little before midnight, I guess, 11 o'clock. They're still running a whole bunch of tests on her, trying to figure out what was going on because she had showed up with stroke-like symptoms. And very similar to the symptoms my mom had in the days prior to her unexpected passing many, many years ago. And I was texting Megan's family, and I was texting Megan's administrative team, and I was texting my dad, trying to keep the various parts and pieces of the family advised as I was learning things. And they had Megan out doing tests. I was sitting in the trauma bay by myself. They had her down the hall, and I don't know where they took her. They took her somewhere. I know they took her to CT. And as I sat there by myself, I started to realize something. And so I texted my dad and I said, Dad, I'm scared. I know it's silly. It's a silly thing to be, but I'm scared. In that moment, the world was a big, scary place. Because had it not been, not simply, but had it not been a complex migraine, and it was, but we did not know that had it not been a complex migraine, had it been something more significant, more immediate, something that had that often comes with much more severe adverse outcomes, like, oh Lord have mercy, a stroke. I don't know what I would have done. Stand by. I just launched a Peace Cross room. And the first thing that came to mind was, if something happens to her, I've got these kids at home. I can barely keep them alive. I don't know anything about raising kids. I still act like a kid. Megan, about a third of the time, says I can't take you anywhere, and most of the time she's right. I got these kids at home that are relying on me. I don't know anything about raising kids. And in that moment, the world was a big, scary place. In that moment, for that brief moment, the world was a big, scary place. And I text my dad, I know it's silly, but I'm scared. And so he called me. He said, there's nothing that you, Zach, can do. You've gotten her to a facility that has the best resources. If they need a resource that they don't have, they will send her to a facility that has those resources. You have put her in the hands of very capable medical professionals. You got her there as quickly as you could. You've given her the best chance for the best possible outcome. Whatever happens, happens. But know that you did everything you could do to get her the best possible outcome. Because in that moment, I looked around and go, like, my worldview got really big in that moment. For a split second, my worldview got really big. And the world was kind of big and scary again. And that's okay. The world's going to get big and scary. And it's not that it's big and scary. It's what do we do when it becomes big and scary? And what we do is we go back and we do those things we talk to our children about. Okay, what do you do when the world gets big and scary? When thing one says, Dad, the world is big and scary today, the kids don't say that. But you can tell, you get the impression that in that moment, their world is big and scary. And so, okay, well, what did I tell my kids about this when their world got big and scary? And I think that in part, that may be why the loss of parents is so significant. I don't know that, but just wondering. I don't see this piece. Yeah, I do. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very small town up in central BC. Oh man, that's awful. Awakened reflection. I did not know you were a native Oklahoman. I did not know that. I was today years old when I found that out, as the young people would say. I would ask you what whereabouts are you from, but I understand you may not want to disclose that to God and everybody on the interwebs. And I also wonder if perhaps, I don't know what your age is, but if perhaps we have directly or indirectly met at some point, have at any point in our respective existences, have our paths crossed. There's not a lot of people running around Canada that say, well, I'm from a small town in Oklahoma. Like, I'm sure there's a few, but I feel like those are the exception and not the rule. But I've been wrong before. Don't tell my wife that, though. Nice. That on top. Okay. All right, let's see. "45 minutes south of Oklahoma City." I kind of know the area. Awakened is right. This big old world, the big spinny ball continues to spin. If we just remember to breathe, yeah. The sun will rise tomorrow just as it's set tonight. And in moments of extreme and extraordinary grief, I think that is a uniquely powerful thing to remember, because in those moments, like in the days following my mother's passing, the world kept rotating. Like the machine, for lack of a better term, the machine just simply kept machining. Right? Like I'm so stricken with grief I can barely breathe, and I look outside and like people had the nerve to like drive down the street. How dare they? But I realize like it's in those moments you realize that we are but just a small piece of the great equation. We are but a tiny part of that puzzle. Good or bad, right or wrong, it is what it is. Right? It's the hand we're dealt. Uh-oh. Good or bad, right or wrong, it is what it is. It's the hand we're dealt. I hope I have one facing the other direction because that's not the right cut. Oh yeah, it is. Right. And so we grab ourselves by the bootstraps and we wake up and put one foot in front of the other. Isn't that the worst thing? First you put one foot in front of the other. Soon we'll be walking out the door. Right, good thing I didn't join the choir. I should have turned a fan on in here with these studio lights on. It's starting to get a little bit warm in here. It is, as they say, becoming a bit warm. I'll start winding this down here in a minute. I've got a nice little rhythm going to my build here, so I figure I'll work the build for a few more minutes, and then we'll start working towards shutdown. I'm missing a piece. That's all right. My microphone is wandering. There we go. Like, why is my face so far from the table? And then I realized my microphone is wandering. That's what's going on. There's a 3 right there. There it went. Oh, see how far behind the chat I got. Gary, have a good night. We'll talk to you soon. Elephant, good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'll run maybe another 15 minutes and then I'll shut her down here. One of these. One of those. One of those. One of these. Two, 3 of these. One of those. 1, 2 of these. And one of these. Oh, I missed. Oh, Lord have mercy. I'm making a mess. Look out. Need to stack these. Yep. Just like this. And then this goes on top. Yeah, it's going to be flush top. I see how they're doing it. One of these right here. Ah, see, I got ahead of myself. I ended up grabbing the wrong piece. I need 3 of these, not 3 of those. 2. Nope. 3. Here we go. That's better. So then 1 goes here. Yep, just like that. And then this is going to go here. And then these 2 are going to stack like that. And then they're going to face. Not like that, dummy. Like that. That's better. And then they're going to face this way. Yeah, that's much better. And then this assembly all goes where? Right here. Missing something. It's not quite making the right sense. Elephant, go back and watch it. It's worth it. Steven, thanks for checking in with me tonight, brother. Be safe, man. And send my regards to your little one. Tell her I have not forgotten about her rainbow, her Lego rainbow. It's on my list of things to make. Look, I'm missing something here. Now this one's giving me a few fits here. Okay, so it will go. I bet the spacing was off just a little bit. It feels like the spacing was off. I feel like it's acting like I'm missing a piece. Hang on. No, Lord, now it's just getting messy. Something about that piece is bottoming out. I may have to work on that later. We'll leave it right there for now. All right. Let's see. Just going to play and watch as soon as we can call tonight. Looking forward to seeing you next day. Yeah. How's Megan feeling? Elephant, she is doing much better. Sorry, I just looked at the chat. She's doing much better. She's back to normal. In fact, she's downstairs doing homework right now. So she's back to normal. She was actually, even though she did get an extension from her faculty, she actually ended up not needing it. She got everything turned in on time, and she kind of laughed and said, "This is the best I've done, actually." So, which I think is just pretty cool. Guys, we'll call tonight. Appreciate everybody tuning in. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell notification. Like this video. Do me a favor. Be kind to somebody. We'll talk to y'all soon.